Palworld 1.0 has been out for approximately 5 minutes, and the internet has already reached the perfectly calm and logical conclusion that it's an asset flip, a scam, an AI-generated Pokemon clone, an Arc clone, a Zelda clone, and possibly responsible for the decline of Western civilization as we know it. I have seen people call the game shallow, creatively bankrupt, completely unfinished, and somehow incapable of developing its own identity because every individual mechanic just reminds them of something else. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about this, and it is one concern that I do understand is the suspicion around AI usage. The CEO has publicly shown an interest in generative AI before. The studio even released a game called AI Art Imposter. So I understand why people are a little weary and cautious. But I've found no actual evidence that Palworld has created design with generative AI by feeding Pokemon into AI or other creatures. And Palworld doesn't carry an AI disclosure on Steam, which is a big thing that if they lied on, they'd risk Steam pulling their game maybe, or alienating the hundreds of thousands of people that are playing their game. Being suspicious is fair. Repeating it as confirmed fact is not. Now, Palworld absolutely has problems. The system expects giant rectangular structures to coexist peacefully inside of a circle, and some pals occasionally behave like they were hired through a questionable temp agency. These are things worth criticizing, but some of these reviews are not thoughtful criticism. They're recycled Twitter discourse reheated in a microwave and served with enough salt to preserve woolly pop through winter. Before someone accuses me blindly of defending the game, I've only played Palworld pretty much every day since full release for 6 to 12 hours. I, in total, have about 140 hours in the game between open beta and now. I'm in the 50s for level. My main base holds about 12, 14 pals. And I've spent far much more time exploring and collecting creatures than progressing efficiently. So no, I've not completed every little last bit of endgame content. And I'm not claiming that Palworld is flawless. What I'm saying is that I have played enough of the actual 1.0 release to wonder whether some of these people are discussing the same game, or whether they've watched somebody stream early access footage from 2 years ago while complaining in chat because Nintendo's unpaid copyright paladins told them they're supposed to be angry. Let's begin with the actual criticism that I actually agree with, because I'm capable of criticizing game and enjoying it without acting like it personally keyed my car. PAL pathfinding can be a bit wonky. PALs occasionally get stuck on structures, stand clearly somewhere they weren't designed to stand, or attempt to reach a workbench using a route that only makes sense in non-Euclidean geometry. My favorite is Yormintide, who's approximately 3 business districts long and simply too much serpent for the ramps at my base. He can't climb ramps properly, so he glitches his head through the floor and waters my crops from another dimension. Is that polished behavior? Absolutely not. Is the job still getting done? Weirdly, yes. I've also noticed a few typos in the tooltips and minor bugs here and there, but nothing that has made the game unplayable for me. I've been streaming it while playing and have not experienced catastrophic performance issues some reviewers have been describing. That doesn't mean that those problems don't exist for other people, but it does mean that the optimization is universally terrible argument is not some unquestionable fact carved into a stone tablet. The other legitimate problem for me is base construction. Some of the buildings in Palworld are massive, yet the game gives us this small circular boundary and expects us to fit what mostly square and rectangular structures in. The architectural size of a Costco and then tell me I have to build inside an inner plate. You can build upward, but expanding outward becomes a constant geometry problem where the reward is discovering that one corner of your base technically belongs to the wilderness now. That deserves some improvement for me, even just make it a square. Palworld deserves improvement. Certain bugs deserve fixing. See how easy that was? We can discuss actual weaknesses without declaring the entire project as a hollow fraud created by a computer in somebody's basement with the help of AI. One of the strangest complaints I found was that Palworld is unbearably grindy. Maybe my tolerance has permanently been damaged by Ark and World of Warcraft, but Palworld is not asking me to sacrifice my firstborn for 20 pieces of metal. I've played games where you spend hours farming materials for a single project, days searching for the perfect tame, and literal years hoping that a mount finally drops or you get a lucky ping on your NPC binder. Palworld's early game moves quickly. The mid-game becomes asking you to plan and upgrade equipment and gather more resources, and the late game takes longer because, shocking development, you've reached the late game. That's just a progression. The game even forces you to keep improving your pal spheres as creatures become stronger, which gives exploration and crafting a reason to continue evolving. I like that I cannot casually throw a starter sphere at a level 50 pal and expect the universe to reward my laziness. Now, yes, I've seen the clips where people throw them with a 0.04% chance and it magically catches. But did they show you the hour they spent throwing spheres at the thing? No, they just showed you it catching. The same goes for the bosses being overtuned because you can't sleepwalk through them using whatever team wandered into your party. My first fight against Balinor was a perfect example. She was in her 30s. I brought pals in their 50s and assumed that it would be an easy fight. I had a level 55 dog with me who knows holy magic, and I figured that she was about to learn why over-leveling exists. That attack landed, and her health bar moved approximately 3 pixels. That's the moment I realized I made a severe error. I had to rotate through my entire team of pals to recover, avoid mechanics, keep everybody alive, and actually pay attention to what was happening. I defeated her with about a minute and a half left on the clock. That did not feel like artificial difficulty. It felt like a small World of Warcraft raid boss. And sometimes a boss requires preparation, and that doesn't make it broken. Sometimes the boss is, in fact, supposed to be a boss. And to Power's credit, they allow you to make changes to your team mid-battle. What's a game with a team and battle mechanics that you're stuck with the ones you bring with you? Oh right, it's the one you all compare it to. Then we have the reviews claiming that Palworld's world is lifeless, visually repetitive, and no longer rewarding after you've seen a few areas. My immediate question is, how much of the map did you actually explore? Because even the earlier portions move from green coastal landscapes with an ocean view into the bright orange, yellowy forest with a village. Then you get the reds, the rivers, the waterfalls, lakes, fields with flowers. That's all in the central island. Then you have the volcano region covered in ash, a frozen wasteland, a giant desert with a marshland and scattered islands all around the map. You have the Sakurajima Island, which feels like springtime in ancient Japan with blossoms and architectures and colors working together in ways that give the region a very special identity. The volcano, probably my least favorite area because navigating without a flying mount feels like self-harm, although there is a strong possibility I simply chose the dumbest route up the mountain. Different regions also have different pals. Yes, some creatures repeat later in zones with higher levels. Spoiler alert, almost every game does that. Pokemon has been placing stronger versions of earlier creatures in later areas for decades. Seeing the same animal in more than one biome doesn't mean the entire map has collapsed creatively. It just means those pals are tailored toward a certain biome. You wouldn't expect to find one of the green grassy pals in the middle of the tundra or the volcano. No, they're going to reuse the asset where they can in grassy areas. Now, my normal session usually begins with me saying, hey, I need certain materials to do this one thing I want to do. I set out, I go looking for the materials, and then I see an egg. On the way to my egg, I see a pal that I haven't caught yet, or that I haven't gotten 5 of yet. Near that pal, I might find an effigy. Near the effigy is a fast travel point. Then I see a fish with the rainbow sparkles, and then all my previous obligations literally just dissolve. 2 hours later, chat asks whether I remember why I left my base or not, and I don't. Then it clicks. Oh right, you were looking for coal. That's not a gameplay loop failing to reward curiosity. That's a gameplay loop weaponizing your curiosity against you. And not enough games do that anymore. We're too used to being spoon-fed everything. The claim that Palworld has no identity because it borrows recognizable mechanics might be the most frustrating argument because it assumes originality requires every ingredient to have never existed before. Palworld is an open-world survival creature farmer game. Pokemon is primarily a turn-based role-playing series. Ark is a wide open survival game centered around dinosaurs. Palworld takes survival crafting, creature collecting, real-time combat, farming, automation, base management, and animal-inspired, notice I said animal-inspired, creature design, and blends them into one extremely specific package. And it is less Pokemon with guns and more Ark and Rune Factory gave birth to a child that has access to the industrial machinery. The pals don't only fight, they farm, help you build, mine, transport materials, cook, water crops. They become part of your base. That relationship reminds me less of Pokemon than anything. Ark built its identity around the fantasy of taming dinosaurs and surviving in a hostile prehistoric world. Palworld builds its identity around anime creatures, a Japanese culture aesthetic, absurd humor, and an industrialized base where your adorable companions may operate heavy machinery. Are the ingredients familiar? Of course they are. So are the ingredients in nearly every game and movie we've been getting in the last 10, 15 years. If shared mechanics remove a game's identity, then every shooter is Call of Duty. Every fantasy adventure where you wield a sword is Zelda. And every farming game is Harvest Moon. Genres develop because creators take familiar systems, rearrange them, combine them, and occasionally make one of the creatures hold a minigun. That brings up the phrase hollow asset flip, which appears to become a decorative synonym for "this game reminds me of other games and has made me emotional." An asset flip is an actual meaning. It does not mean a game uses crafting, survival mechanics, familiar weapons, or visual conventions that exist elsewhere. Games, films, television shows reuse assets, props, architecture, sound libraries, in genre language consistently. There are only so many ways you can make an AK-47. Eventually, the gun is going to continue looking suspiciously like a gun. You can argue that certain mechanics are not deep enough, or that the game follows trends too closely. Those are real discretions. But trend chasing, unfinished, and asset flip are not interchangeable words just because typing "I dislike that" did not feel dramatic enough. The creature copying discussion has more nuance. Do some pals look like Pokemon? Yes. Does that automatically bother me? No. Two creatures based on a sheep are going to share traits because they're both based on sheep. That does not mean Pokemon copyrighted a sheep. Anubis is probably the power I can see the most direct connection because the silhouette resembles Lucario. But the design is also very clearly based on Anubis, the ancient god, and it fits with other regional influences in the game. Inspiration, parody, and imitation are worth discussing. So what I do not understand is why people see one shared trait and immediately decide the entire design process is criminal. Recognizing a resemblance should become analysis, not replace it. Now we reach the final boss of bad Palworld discourse. AI slop. I'm exhausted by that phrase becoming the internet's favorite way to dismiss anything people dislike without examining it. AI is a tool. Tools can be used well, badly, or by someone who should legally be kept away from Canva. Society has a long tradition of panicking whenever technology changes how people create, and then acting shocked when the technology doesn't politely disappear. We should teach people how to use new tools responsibly, criticize misuse, and demand transparency where it matters. What we should not do is treat the word AI like a magical finishing move that automatically wins every argument. The old posts from Pocket Pair's CEOs are fair context. They show that he was invested in AI-generated creature concepts and publicly thinking about copyright. They do not prove that Palworld's finished creature designs were generated by AI. Old comments can create suspicion. Suspicion is not a production history. People also grow, change their opinions, and say things years earlier that no longer represent what they believe now. I'm sure some of us could gig through our old social media posts and find something that makes us want to launch the entire internet into the sun. If somebody has actual evidence showing how Palworld's finished assets were created, present it. Until then, stop treating an assumption like confirmed forensic evidence because Twitter gave you a phrase that sounded clever. The claim that Palworld's praise feels forced or fake are even more ridiculous. And the loudest people making this argument usually come from the most tribal corner of Pokemon discourse, the toxic fans. Where enjoying other creature games is apparently an act of treason. I've played Palworld for 6 to 12 hours almost every day since release. Nobody's paying me to do that. Nobody locked me in Pocket Pair's basement. I'm playing because it's a fun game. A lot of the players have been waiting for something to fill the gap left by Arc, especially after people became frustrated with where the series went. Palworld takes the creature taming survival formula and expands the creature's role inside the base. They're not just a combat tool or a resource generator anymore. They're actively participating in the life of your base. People liking something you dislike is not evidence-manufactured praise. Sometimes the conspiracy is simply that other people have a better time than you. You can think Palworld is shallow, you can dislike its humor, its combat, creature designs, or whether its systems fit together. You can play it for 10 hours and decide you never want to see another PAL. That's fine. But deciding that everyone else must be pretending because their enjoyment conflicts with your opinion is not criticism. It's a main character syndrome with a Metacritic attitude. Palworld 1.0 has real problems. Pathfinding gets confusing, Your Vermintide is currently watering crops through my floor because the stairs are his natural predator and the base building radius expects circles and rectangles to resolve their differences through diplomacy. Those things should be fixed. There are bugs worth documenting, systems worth improving, and parts of the game that different players will find repetitive. Criticize what the game actually does badly, but calling an entire game AI slop or a hollow asset flip without evidence does not make you some savant. It makes you sound like Twitter installed a pull string on your back and you're repeating whatever phrase came out last. Play the game, research the claim, and think for yourself. You may still hate Palworld afterward, and that's completely fine. At least then the opinion will finally belong to you. And that's when things get really interesting.